wonderful people. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Welcome to the Inner Perspective. This week's discussion is culture. I'm definitely gonna define more what that is, but we'll just go over the rules again. So boom, one mic. Let those that are speaking finish their thoughts. Try to stay on mute most of the time. I mean, sometimes you want to give like a little comment with one word and stuff. Definitely fine. But if it's like long, prolonged sentences, just type it in the chat. We'll get it. Second rule, respecting each other's opinions. It's going to be a heated discussion because I know like this is something we're definitely not all going to agree on. But like we don't got to be rude about it. You got to argue. Just keep with the flow. Respect is a must in these discussions. If it's not if it's not kept a buck, I'll kick you out. Like I'm not trying to be rude about it, but we definitely need that there. That ties into safe space. Like I want this to be a place where people could share their thoughts, their experiences, and sometimes it gets like a tad bit personal. But if you don't want that shared on my website, I'll just cut it out. So you just say safe space beforehand. That you will definitely see me do a thumbs up like this, so that you know I got you. So when you say that, that means I'm cutting it out. You're never going to see it again. It's going to be deleted. Also that if we talk about this discussion somewhere else, that part of the conversation would not be brought up. Last but not least, be present and active. Bro, you don't got to speak all the time. Even you like doing your reactions in the background, trust me, we see it because it be hella funny because I be cracking up when I'm doing these recordings. To begin with, could everybody state your culture? Don't speak it, like write it in the chat right now. For instance, I'm giving an example. I call myself Guy Tegan. Like I'm a Black Guy Tegan specifically. That's my culture. So like I'm Antiguan. I was born in Antigua. I was there for 12 years. Then I moved to Guyana where I stayed for 3 years, like if I remember correctly. Then I moved up here when I was 15. And I've been here for that long. And now I'm now 21, gonna be 22 in January. So that's what, 6-ish years. So like I've traveled across like 3 different countries, like 3 different cultures for this time period. Trust me, it influenced me so much. Big example, the Antigua national dish is pepper pot and fungi. And in Guyana, we have pepper pot. We have it every year for Christmas, Christmas Eve. Like that's a big like tradition. One day my stepmom came home and she's like, she has pepper pot. I opened this thing, it's green. And I'm like, ew, what is this? This is not pepper pot. The pepper I grew up with has mad meat inside. It's black, gravy, all that stuff. This pepper was green. It had peas. I was like, I don't know what this is. She's like, you grew up like you're Antigua and this is Antigua pepper pot. When I tell y'all, I was shook. I said, there's a difference. I thought it was the same thing. Literally, like always growing up, I thought it was the same thing. And that's when I realized, yo, I was like, how Antiguan am I really? Like what distinguished that? Like I was born there. I grew there for 12 years. I had the Antiguan accent. I spoke like one. But then I never realized like how much of my lingo, the music I listened to was all like so heavily influenced for like my parents. And even though they were there now and well, getting to that, how their culture changed, like it's crazy how you feel like you're so much of this one thing and then it takes like one instance for that to change. So that will lead into my first question. What defines culture? Like what makes something your culture? For instance, Black culture versus American culture. A lot of people do say, once you're Black, it's all the same thing. However, I'm Black. And my culture of being Black might be different for someone who was born here in America and was Black. So like, I want that to be the first. We have you. I got you, girl. You go.
What defines my culture as a first generation Jamaican? So I was born in a military base in America, but then we moved to Jamaica. Then they moved me to Queens when I was 3 years old, and then it was always back and forth. So what defines my culture? I never related to African Americans. Like they always would talk in school like about like grits or type of food I never had. I used to think grits was porridge, or I would never forget the day my teacher asked us, do you all want, because she brought fruits and she was like, you all want pear? And I was like, I was like, pear with what? she was like the fruit pear. I was like, pear is the fruit? Okay, I was stupid at the time too. Avocado is a fruit. But I was just talking about it, and then she gave it to us. I was like, "What is this?" And she was like, "This is a pear," and I was like, "This isn't a pear." And then the class started laughing. It was funny because you know how they call pear avocado. Just simple stuff like that that helped shape me and the whole, like when we were like 4 years old at a party, our aunts and uncles would like put us in a circle and be like, Dutty wine, I have the Dutty wine right there, whatever. Just stuff that wouldn't be considered normal with African Americans. They'll be like, why is your family making you dance in front of them, or stuff like that. So I feel like being a first generation Jamaican puts you in a limbo because you learn about slavery in America and Rosa Parks and all these people, but it's not really people that shaped your ancestors. So I always felt like I never knew enough, and my family don't really would put me onto the history of Jamaica that much. So I always felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. Like my ancestors were enslaved here, they were enslaved in Jamaica, and it just was it just felt, I felt like in African Americans, they didn't really claim they're African American when I was younger. Everyone claimed Jamaica or some other country besides America. So if I felt like when I would say I'm Jamaican, they'll be like, "Oh, you're just saying that. You're just black," or something like that. They just didn't. You said, but they just, because everyone wants to be Jamaican when we're younger. So, but then when you're actually Jamaican, it's kind of discredited because everyone wants to be Jamaican at that time. And now that we're older, now they're saying Caribbeans think they're better than everybody, and it's like, when we're younger, you all wanted to be Caribbean. Black Americans, we all are black, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have to talk about what we really are. I won't forget at a college meeting when, for Black Onyx at my school, one girl said, I feel like everyone doesn't want to claim black. They want to say everything else as if being black is a bad thing. No, I should be able to say I'm Jamaican without y'all thinking I have self-hate about being black. But I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe some of y'all else could relate or whatever. But
I definitely picking up what you're putting out, especially the not claiming you're American. I find it very funny because you ask, I'm like, what are you? I'm American. I'm this American. I'm like, were you born here? Your parent? Like, do you like exactly what are you? Or they're like, oh, I'm this type of people look. They love to be Jamaican and Trinidadian. Love it. Love it. I did see Tiki, wanted to speak, so since I'm gonna just let you hop in, I'm gonna mute myself. Okay. You got the floor, girlie.
Yeah, I wanted to say identity is it's kind of a weird thing, especially in like America that's filled with so many cultures. So for starters, um, let me say culture is literally just your way of life, right? So I know some people try to like mix it with identity and stuff like that, but your culture is your way of life. So you can have a nationality, which is American, but your culture is Jamaican, and that's okay. Or like, no matter your nationality, really doesn't define what your culture is. Because some people can be born here, like my friend Adam, would step back home, like to live his life, so that he grew up in a different culture than the American culture. So the reason why when anyone asks, I say I'm Jamaican American at this point is because yes, I live in Jamaica. I grew up in Jamaica, but at the same time, I moved here at the age of like 11, 12. So it's like around that time, I was completely immersed into a culture I pretty much knew nothing about. And it's like, given everything like that has changed in terms of my perspective of things, my way of life, like I'm celebrating Thanksgiving. I'm celebrating Thanksgiving, all these new holidays, like getting into this new way of life. And I'm not saying I disown my culture, because once I go back home, like, or just even without going back home right here, like I still cook the same Jamaican food, but I'm also trying new foods. I'm also trying different ways of life. I have a different political standing. Like certain things have changed since I've been here. And now on top of that, I'm also like an American citizen. So yes, by nationality, technically I would be Jamaican and American, but culturally too, I was raised in both cultures. So that's the reason why I identify it. But literally, I think people mix it up because like a way of life doesn't mean that you have to be from that place, if you get what I mean.
Okay, so then like, but then my question would be like, what's the difference then? Like, cause for instance, I definitely agree with everything has a culture. There's anime culture, there's goth culture. If you like to sleep with just blankets, blanket culture. Like it's a generalized, like how you know how we have stereotypes? Cultures are stereotypes, basically. So but then what does the woo? I'm sorry, I saw that she loved anime and had to snaps. The question is like, why is it then? Why is it a problem when somebody claims, for instance, let's say let's say someone's they were born here in America, but their family is from St. Vincent. Okay. They have like their entire way of life is Vincentian. Okay, so that's how they care about their day. They don't know nothing else. Why is it when they claim that culture now, other people have an issue with it, and not just other people like in a general sense, but like for instance, someone who was born there, why would they have an issue with them claiming that culture? If anyone wants
What
to
I
pick up.
think it is also with that is I think it's the ignorance, and I think it's ignorance from both sides, right? So it's like me growing up in Jamaica, yes, I'm definitely gonna have a different perception of culture in comparison to someone who was born and raised here with parents that are from the Caribbean. I think the issue stems about when like some I've had these instances, let's say like where someone will ask me something about Jamaica, or even in like CSA meetings that we had at Plattsburgh, they would bring up stuff about the Caribbean, and those kids that were born here would feel like they know everything about like the culture in comparison to those who were actually from there living here. Like I cannot tell you anything about American culture at that time, especially given that because I was partially raised there. You get what I mean? Like I've never actually lived there. So what I'm literally learning through like my parents' experience. So you have to understand that even though it's a way of life, there's still a gap between people who were like actually born there versus or like born and raised there versus people who are like living here in somewhere else, because it's the same way. If you ask me what high school is like in Jamaica, I cannot tell you, versus someone who's actually there, who lived, attended high school, who's working in the community. Like I cannot tell you because I cannot relate to that way of life. Yes, I saw my parents go through it, but at the same time, because I didn't experience it, that's a separate culture like growing up there that I cannot relate to. Even though I'm from there, I have to also identify that there's a gap. So I can't tell you what life is like in that reference. So we can share a culture, but at the same time we don't have the same experience with that specific culture, because you have to get it. Like if I'm genuinely raised somewhere else and I'm only hearing stories about it, it's still not the same thing. Like it's not the same experience. We share the same culture, but we have two completely different experiences. So ignorance is what literally to me creates that divide.
There. All right, Tash, you got the floor, sweetie.
So yeah, usually when people ask me, I always say like it's like a mix. Like I say, like I will usually say I'm first like American because that obviously that's what I am. I was born here and stuff like that. But I also say like, as I put in the chat, like I'm a hint of Jamaican. Like I have a little flavor because both of my parents were born there and stuff like that. So I'm directly influenced. Like your parents are your first teachers, so everything I learned about the world and like about like food and like language and stuff like that, it's from them. Like I remember when I used to go to school and like they would say like, oh, I say certain things and like a lit with pot oil and stuff like that. And I'm like, what? Like, but like, even though I was born here, but that's because like I've learned from my parents and stuff like that, like foods and stuff like that. But I always felt like I'm in this weird limbo because I felt like with the like regular like Americans, Black Americans, I felt like I didn't fit in directly with them because I had hints of Jamaican culture in me. But at the same time, like with Jamaicans, I didn't really feel like I felt like I didn't feel like I fit in because like I wasn't born there. So there's a lot of things I don't know. Like I don't speak the language, like I don't speak with the accent fully, like and it's like there's a lot of things I don't know. So like Takesha was saying, like when certain discussions happen, I sit back and I like, listen, because I don't know everything about, I wasn't born there. I haven't been there in a minute. So like, there's obviously things that I wouldn't know. So like, I think like I do have to take a step back. I think that's the problem. A lot of people don't take a step back and realize where their position leaves them with their perspectives and things like that. So yeah.
Tashana, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. Why do you feel like you should only say a hint? Like, do you not feel like it? I don't know. Why do you feel like you were made to say a hint because you're discredited from being born in America? Or because you know how Latinos or whatever, most of them are first or second generations and they jack where they're from hard. So do you feel like in the Black community, you feel like you have to say a hint because just because you weren't born there, that you can't jack it, like not fully, but at least more than a hint?
So good question. So I feel like it's partially that, no, it's a lot of that. Like in the beginning too, like I just felt like, okay, like I was discredited a lot too, like and stuff like that. Like, so that's why I used to say like a hint of, because I used to be like, oh, I'm Jamaican and stuff like that. And then I changed it to like a flavor because, I was discredited a lot and like saying, oh, you don't even know much about it and stuff like that. But then also a lot of it was like internally too. Like I felt like, okay, Tashana, like, you haven't been there in a minute and stuff like that. Like you're not that comfortable speak. Like, I mean, now I'm like, I'm more comfortable speaking in patois, but before I'm like, no, you're not gonna catch me saying anything in it. But like, so it's just like I feel like it's partially like it was like outside. A lot of it was outside people in the beginning, but now it's like I think internally I internalized that, and now that's why I say. But good thing because I didn't realize that could be part of the reason why I say a flavor. So yeah.
Just to chime in after her, I think what me too is that when people ask about identity, we automatically assume that they're asking about culture, like just in general. So if I'm in Jamaica and somebody asks me where I'm from, like, or what am I, I'm gonna say Jamaican, right? Because literally that's what it is. But if I'm here, if someone asks me, like, what am I would say Jamaican American. And I guess it's just because of like how much it's placed on identity. But in Tashana's case, like I would say even me meeting her, like even if I was back home, if I met her back home, let's say she traveled back home and that's where I met her, I would have considered her more of American of Jamaican descent, if that makes sense. Because then I'm like, it's more of an identity thing. Like you're not really, I don't know, when people ask you like, what are you? It's like trying to figure out, are they asking you like what you are culturally or what do you identify as in general? Because that's what I'm saying. They mix the terms so much that people really don't know what it is. Like, is it identity? Is it culture? Is it nationality? Like it's all different. So you can be American and of Jamaican descent, which means all of your culture is literally like Jamaican. And you can also be Jamaican of American descent, which there's people who move back to Jamaica or people who move back home, but they're American. So you would be an American, but of Jamaican. I don't know. It's just like, it's so freaking confusing. I feel like the way how we were raised back home, we weren't really asked to identify ourselves, right? Like we didn't have that notion because even when I grew up, well, let me say, excluding countries like Guyana and Trinidad, excluding countries like Guyana and Trinidad, because in Jamaica and smaller Caribbean islands, even when I was going to school, we would see Chinese kids, we would see Indian kids, we would see kids from all over, but we all assumed that everybody was Jamaican, right? And I don't think there was ever a point in which we asked, because we would just say, oh, this person's Chinese Jamaican, or this person's this, or this person's that. But then coming here, it's just like, okay, you all have to be you all have to be placed in this box. Like society makes you feel like you have to fit in a specific category. And it's funny because if you think about it, when we see white people, we don't necessarily ask them like, where are they, like, where are you from? Like, what are you? Like, who are you? You get what I mean? Like, you see a white person, you just say, oh, like, that's a white person. Or like, you never think like, oh, is this person white American? Are they from Europe? Are they from this place? Like, you don't think about that. But with us as Black people, it's like we have to fit into a category. And I feel like that's because of, you know, imperialism and all the stigmas that come with it. Because even if they ask you like on a thing what you are, if you put white, you really have no other category to fill out. But if you put Black, then they're like, okay, are you Black and African American, or are you Black and Asian? Like, there's so many, I don't know, like stuff like that. It's a problem.
I'm gonna come to you. So basically you were saying like you feel like we're mixing identity with culture. I do get that. I do think culture is a part of your identity. So I guess what thing is people just make culture their entire identity, which is like where the issue comes. I definitely get that. Just you did want to speak so you could follow up. I'm trying to fix this.
I kind of agree to disagree, because I feel like when I fill out applications, it's always Black, like Black or African American. The only time I saw diversity is like Pacific Islander, or if you press Latinx, there's a mad option. So I feel like, why is there so much options for Hispanics, as if that is something they could fit into, but not with Black Americans, because Black people, because I feel like Hispanics, that is a culture. Like, they're different. They have Central American, they have Caribbean, Latinos, they have Spaniards and stuff. They have all those options on census, but I feel like we only have Black. So I feel like, I keep saying that, I feel like I typed in the chat, I feel it makes a difference that most Caribbean islands besides Haiti do not have an official language, because whenever a Haitian speaks Creole, you just assume they're Haitian. You don't think, were they born here or whatever. I feel like language plays a big part, because we only have dialect and accents. So I wonder, if we had a language, would we have that many options like Hispanics? So I just want to know what makes the difference, because you have Afro Latinos and they get that option. They get all these options and we just get Black. So I just like, when is it okay to not just put Black, you know? Like, why does the white people get to decide who gets more options and who don't? Why do they get to specify, but it's not okay if we specify?
I mean, I get exactly, no, I get what you're saying, like, especially with the language, but then it's also like, if someone speaks Patois, they just assume that people are Jamaican. To be honest, like, if someone just like speaks Patois, which is weird because we would call that, like, for instance, it's a form of dialect. It's like Jamaican dialect. That's how this is all ignorance. Truthfully, because I would know the difference between a Jamaican dialect or Jamaican Patois and my own dialect, or my dialect in another countries, because we all have like our forms of like broken English or whatever, and it's vastly, okay, I can't say vastly, but it's distinctly different. But for those who are not born there, then technically they're not really going to pick up on it. For instance, like those who are born in Africa, when they move here, how much of us really know which part of Africa they're from? Or we just call them all African? For instance, there's South Africans who are white, and then look, we don't really like associate them with being African either. So then I feel like culture also comes out in like all those different things, like color, the way you speak, how you speak it, those on the outside influencing your like perspective of things as well. So that does lead into another question I have. To now, what is the difference between conforming and adapting? I don't know how much of y'all got like your parents, let's say you're first generation. I'm actually like, I was born in another country or whatever. Let's say you're first generation. And you move to a different country now. Your parents are very strict about you conforming to the culture that you're now in. Oh, like you hear this all the time. I don't want you being like those Black Americans. Huh? You mean where I live now? Where I'm about to grow up? The kids I'm about to go to school with?
So like I can't really speak like personally, because I'm not necessarily like first generation in terms of like my family, because I do consider myself African American and Caribbean American, but Caribbean American in terms of like my mom, like my grandma's from Belize, and like they were also born in like Guatemala, So like that's where a lot of my family is. And my dad is from America, like he's born here, and so was my grandfather on my mom's side. So it's like in terms of conforming and adapting, like my grandma, like she's even said it to my mom, like that's some American stuff. Like you really doing like you're really doing some American stuff. And I think in terms of like conforming and adapting, it's really about understanding. Because if you're adapting, like I think you're understanding like, okay, like I moved from wherever, like you move from like Guyana and you come here and it's like, okay, I understand what these people are saying. I understand like what their lingo is, like I mean, but it's like you're making the choice whether or not you would like to use it yourself. Whereas if you're like, I think you're conforming, you feel like you have to in order to fit into their mold, in order like for maybe them to understand you, versus like you're just understanding them and it's like, oh, I like that, like I get that, I want to use that, like that's something that I would like to use in my everyday life. Or like even people who like, what is that, like when you code switch, like when you speak with your friends one way but then you go home and then like you speak with like your family another way. Like I think also like in terms of that, it's really about understanding and choosing things about like the culture that like you now live in. Do you want to like use those things and like help that to basically adjust, versus like, oh, like I'm going to take everything because I feel like I need to do this in order for them to like understand me, in order for this to like work, kind of thing. So,
I pick up what you put in down. Yes, definitely the definitely the choice. I feel like it's like, I guess it's the word choice as well. Like the conforming, that's more of a like a forced situation. Like if I don't do this, I'm not gonna get the job. People are gonna speak differently about me, and like it's situations like that. Whereas adapting, it's just, I mean, I'm here now. Why did I move? Like if I was gonna keep with the same, like the same, like not saying that you can't use the same word choice. Like, look, I came here, I got mad Caribbean friends. I'm like, bro, I left there to come here. Y'all just follow me everywhere I go. Come on now. So it's like there's always gonna be spaces for you to, if you need to fulfill that side of you, I guess if that's what you really want to say, there's always spaces for you to fulfill that side of you. I guess it's like merging the two is where the question comes from, but also like ties into identity, as Takeshi was speaking earlier. Like there's no there's no one, you're never just this one thing. I think that's where the issue comes from. We feel like we need to be this one thing, because that ties into not feeling like you're enough. Because like Tashana said, like she felt like, she said she's a hint or like a flavor. You're influenced by Jamaican culture because your parents, like they're both that's how they speak. The things you eat in your house and make, like, look, trying to be having some oxtail, bro. Whew, we be all up in it. Like that's what you're used to. You're used to this way of life. However, not just like your own self, but people outside influence that. Are you really? Do you even have enough to clean that? That's where the issue is coming from. Like I feel like, especially when you move, especially when you migrate from one country to another, like you feel like if you start picking up the way of life there, when you go back home, you're not going to be enough of whatever you're supposed to be. Definitely had that spoken to me before. Why are you saying that ass? Because I like the way it effing sounds. Are you dead ass right now? I could come up like, like things like that. Like why using that term? Or like, oh, you sound Yankee. They love saying that. They love saying that. You sound mad.
I mean, I can't really relate as much as you guys, because like when my mom is a first generation, my dad is a second generation. Me growing up, I was always kept in the house anyway, so I didn't really have that judgment. I didn't have anybody asking me all these questions. And every school that I went to, it was like in middle school. My middle school was a predominantly Haitian Catholic school, so it was like everybody in there was some type of Caribbean, and it was like no white kids, so nobody was asking no questions, and it was bliss for me. Everybody was like, "Oh, you're Haitian and Trini." I mean, it was like I'm crazy, but it's okay. I don't. There's no judgment. I was like, yeah, I guess Haitians are, we supposed to do voodoo in Haiti, and in Trinidad, we're just what they say is no shame. Um, so like, and then going to high school. High school is different because high school I ended up before going, or ending up in my last high school, I was in a predominantly white school. And although the the staff of the school they were predominantly white, everybody was predominantly white. Nobody really paid no mind to where specifically you came from. When I went to college, it was the same thing. I've worked hard enough to put myself in situations where everything is diverse, and I've never felt a way about where I came from, or felt like I had to fit in or do anything, because the only opinion that I cared about was my family's opinion. And that's the only opinion, like, those are the people that, even to this day, a lot of people in my circle are just strictly family. And if you're in my circle, I really trust you as a friend enough, and you are, whether you're white, Caribbean, or whatever, I don't care. As long as you understand me and we don't step on each other's culture, it's not an issue. Because everybody's been saying things that I've thought about in terms of how people treat each other and how people really have the nerve to stick their nose into like other people's business in terms of where they come from, what they're doing, like how they live their life. Like, my dude, is it's not your business. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, like whether like I prefer this kind of food or whether I prefer to live my life, whether I came from Jamaica or not, or I was born in Trinidad or not. Either way, my family followed certain rules and cultures because they brought that here. And whether I was American or not, or I was born here, and I was just like, this is what you are. No offense, but these Americans are clowns, and you need to stick with what you are because these Americans are gonna play you. And that was it. And I was like, I I am what I am. I don't go by American. If somebody asks me what am I, I'm like, okay, I will give you a full list of what I am. I will say I am Haitian, Trinidadian, and Vinci. And nowhere do I say American. Now I'm not jacking, I'm not American. Obviously, I was born here. But for me, it's like when I walk in my house, it's not an American household. It's a Caribbean household. So what do we say? There's only so much Americanized aspects of my life that I can really own up to. And like people like to say that I'm an Oreo and I'm white on the inside. I mean, they're not wrong. But I'm like, it's like I mean, even I don't know how to describe how I'm an Oreo. I just understand where they're coming from because like though my lifestyle has been very much so different from the average Caribbean child, whether they're first generation or second. I was raised differently, and what I have is different compared to others. So I was just like, I I don't really question or debate about anything. Like your opinion is your opinion. At the end of the day, I know what I am. I don't have a problem. So whether it was conforming or adapting, I did none of that. It was what I am is what I am. If you don't agree, I don't give a shit. I'm sorry.
Period.
So,
Oh.
but that was just it. Have a good.
I'm weak. I see. Let me see. I see you just shared then Takeshi. I'm gonna let you pick up. But I did want to chime in on that Oreo comment because what that is, because I could actually like just a little bit what that is. It's like, why did we associate the white color with good things? Why are we associating like why am I an Oreo? Because I have
Exactly.
why am I an Oreo? Because I speak
proper. Because I speak proper.
Like, let me know. And what the hell is proper?
Exactly.
But I digress.
Like,
I'm gonna let you shit. I'm gonna let her take over. Stop. I'm gonna let her take over.
Like, what I wanted to say with the conformity and accommodating thing, I feel like with this also goes back to the last question. I feel like Black Americans don't really fit in anywhere in America. Like they want to take pride in African American and stuff, but then America repeatedly does them filthy. So I feel like that's also why other Black people that come here also want to take pride in their culture because we don't really fit in anywhere when cops see us or whatever, they just see a Black person or whatever. So one main reason I never felt the need to accommodate or conform, especially with my name. I could never just, they always like, what do your name means? Where is that from? Or like job applications, they automatically know I'm Black or ethnic or something, whatever they assume. So I feel as if I take pride in saying first generation Jamaican. I don't feel like it's a need. It's more just that's just what I am. I always feel the need to say that because especially when all my classes, I'm the only Black person, especially as a teacher, when we talk about education and all that, they don't have any background on my culture or any other culture besides Black people being slaves in America, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, all that. So I always feel the need to say, I'm Jamaican. And then they're all like, oh, Bob Marley. Like, I feel like there needs to be a lot of educating going on. I don't feel like there's a need for me to say it, but I feel like that's just what I am. So they could get more educated because they don't have knowledge on our culture. So I don't feel like we should feel like we have to accommodate or whatever, because I feel like there needs to be a lot of education on where our families is from, especially I take pride in what my family brought to America for me. And I don't feel like some things I can relate to with Black Americans, but I don't know. I feel like there's also a self-love issue with Black people overall and whatever. Like no one really takes pride in what they are here because we're repeatedly broken down to you're just Black. Like I remember one girl just said, oh, at the end of the day, when the cops see us, we're all just Black. Why should that be acceptable? Why is it not okay to be what you really are, what your parents did and what they took to get you to this country and whatever? That's why I feel like we shouldn't accommodate. We shouldn't conform. I don't know. And maybe in a perfect world, you could go to your job interview and talk in the dialect you grew up with. Maybe eventually, but I don't feel like we should have to do that, And I know other cultures do this too, besides Black people. I know other cultures feel like they have to conform just to get the white man's approval because they lack the knowledge of understanding anything besides what they know already from their European textbooks, Westernized textbooks. But yeah.
Um, I was gonna say, what I'm gonna say is, I feel like that, like everyone is saying, like, yes, we're prideful about this Caribbean culture, but I haven't heard one person say, I'm proud to be an American, like in this whole group. And I think that's where the issue comes from. I feel like moving here, like white Americans are so proud to say, like, I am an American, but I haven't met a lot of Black people in America that are proud to say, like, I am American. And I think that's the issue because honestly, just Shaya, honestly, there's literally nothing wrong with being American because, to be honest, no matter where you go, I get it, like you enjoy Caribbean culture, but at the same time, anywhere you go, there are issues. Our, our government is just as corrupt. We have just as much corruption, if not more, in terms of our government. And a lot of people try to make it seem like racism and those things don't are not in the Caribbean. Yes, it is. Like colorism in Jamaica stems as an effect of racism itself as well. Like coming here, let me say what I think the problem is. When I came here and I was attending school, I was learning about history. What they said was American history. But then when I was learning, literally the only thing we really learned about Black people, like you guys said, was slavery. I don't really recall them mentioning anything about Black culture, talking about the Harlem Renaissance, anything about that. So I think what the issue is, Black Americans really don't know what their culture is, or even when they do know, it's not something that's taught in schools. It's not a part of the education curriculum. So like, how can you identify with something, or how can I move here and say, yes, I want to be a part of this culture when I really don't know what that culture is? Like Black people living in America should also be proud to say that they're American, despite everything else that's going on. Because in Jamaica, we have our issues too. It's not all carnival parties, all those other things that you're seeing. Like even the other day, I remember the Supreme Court in Jamaica ruled that you can get expelled from school wearing dreads. Like it's little things like that. Those things are issues that we have to deal with as well. It's not all peaches and cream. A large portion of the population is suffering and leaving from up here, going down there. You see a lot of the good things, but there's a lot of bad that happens as well. So it's just like, we take all of that, all of the history, all of those things we go through, and we're still proud to say that we're Jamaican. And I guess it's because here we don't have a family member who came from America to Jamaica, but then that's also a thing there. Like you also have people who move back home, like I was saying before, and choose to become a part of the culture, but they still identify as whatever they were outside. That's the reason why we say Chinese Jamaican or German Jamaican. So I don't know why it is that being here, to Ray and Jashea, I'll ask specifically then, like, why is it not, well, like, why do you not feel comfortable to say that you're American? Because in a way you guys are. So it's like, why not?
Can I go right? All right. Okay. There we go. There we go. So, dang, it was in my head. Okay, so one big thing in education right now is African Americans are fighting for more of their history to be taught in schools besides slavery. They want more about the good things Black people have done, Black people entrepreneurs, the business, the first Black millionaire. They want all of that into their history because they feel like there's not enough representation. I'm not represented in that. Like, I feel like everyone could say, oh, my ancestors, this and that. When they're talking about reparations for African Americans, that does not include our ancestors. So we would be literally discluded besides African Americans that had their people enslaved here. That would not include people that came here from Africa with generations or people that came here from the Caribbean or whatever. So I feel as if I feel like we do not relate to the history aspect, which has to go with claiming a culture. Like you have to feel a pride in your culture because your people are from that culture. But it's like if your people aren't from that culture, how can you really sit and write an essay? And because one thing I learned about writing essays, you always have to put your personal antidote in it. I don't have an antidote to put with that. It's just like, oh, she's Black like me, so I'm writing a paper on her. I can't include something like, oh, back in the day, my great great grandmother did this. My great grandmother was in the civil rights movement. So I can't do stuff like that because I don't relate to that. And I can't go to my family and ask them for some background. So I understand the peaches and cream thing because a lot of people think it's perfect these countries. There's a reason why our family brought us here. Like we would have stayed if it was so great. But it's also we don't I feel like personally I don't relate to that. And also I got all of my colorism issues from African Americans and my own family members. So I know it comes from Jamaica too. But I feel like I can't apply my personal antidote. I feel like I can't walk on the Malcolm X Street. Let me stop talking fast and feel a sense of pride because I want to know more about what my grandmother went through, what my mother went through, and all that historical stuff. I don't know because I was too busy being put into my head about what African Americans did. So it's like that lack of history is leaving me out and into a middle ground where I don't relate to this middle. So it's more as if I don't take pride in calling myself an American because I feel like I was not accepted as an American. Like I didn't know how to do any of those dances like the Soldier Boy or the chicken noodle soup or none of that. I could not relate to what they did. And I always felt left out because my family members were straight from there. They was like, I'm not going to teach you that. I don't know how to do that. How you do that? Like, so I don't take pride calling myself a African American or Black American because I feel like I never was given the hug, like, come, you're with us. Because I'm not really with them, if that makes sense. The only thing we relate to is complexion. Like I recently tried soul food and it's fire. And it's fire. Like does that make sense? That's why I don't really claim it. I got all my self-love issues from other African Americans and all that. So it was just,
So like
everyone loves Shensia. Everyone loves Shensia because
I'm sorry, I had to.
she represents Jamaican women, mixed and whatever. But everyone was talking down on Spice, like,
But basically the reason why you don't like you're not saying like you're a proud American, whatever, is because you don't really you don't relate. you just don't relate. You can't claim something you don't relate to, which that makes a lot of sense. I did have Tash rated. The only reason why I'm gonna do Ray next is because Takeshi related a question to both of them. So I'll let Ray go and then Tashana could go. You could go Reynald.
Tashana, I'm gonna keep it quick. I got you. I don't know. For me, I agree with what she said as well, but it's not that I had a problem with categorizing as American. It's just if I'm a very technical person, and I history, it was my favorite subject, but I pay attention. And for me, it's just like, yo, all y'all that want to call yourselves Americans, your ancestors was not born here. I'm sorry, but a lot of did American, the only people who can actually stay claim to this land are Native Americans. And other than that, I'm sorry, you're not from here. So I don't feel like I need to categorize I'm American. Obviously, I'm living here. I'm here. If you asking me where I'm from, I'll give you my culture. But what you asking me this? You're not asking me in Jamaica. You're asking me in America. You're not asking me Trinidad. We in America. So where am I from? I feel like I didn't need to. I don't need to say that I'm American because a lot of us. I feel like there should. That's not something that people. I'm not saying people shouldn't be proud of it. I mean, yeah, as of today, our culture as Americans is different from people in Europe and people other things. But that's not something that's like actually rooted in your family bindings and all of that. This is something like that we all can agree on. We don't mind living life like this compared to how other people live life in other countries. But it's America itself is a conglomeration of a whole bunch of freaking different people. So I feel like there's no need to say American because once you step foot in you from somewhere else. I don't like it's so weird to me why people feel the need to specify American. Like, yo, like you said, when we look at white people, we don't like ask them where you from, whether you're Irish or whether you are from anywhere else in the UK or anywhere else that's not America. It's like I don't do it to discriminate. I don't do it. It's because I already know you're not from here. So I'm not gonna ask you where you from. You's not from here. Now, if you now again, I mean, once I get to know you, I'll ask you like, what's your culture or whatever, yada yada. But again, if I see a black man in the street, he's black. He's either just black or he's Caribbean. Okay. If you don't want to, I'm not gonna ask. If a white person, I see a white man, he's either born here or he was not born here. But why is it that American has to be a title? Like why is that something that we have to speak on? Like we have to admit because I just don't get that, to be honest. But that's it.
I got you. I got you. Basically, like, look, I'm already here, so you already know what I am. Like, I'm born here. Like, all right. But what else am I? Like, there's more to me than just that. I feel that. I feel that, Tash. I know you wanted to go. Someone that you pick up. Go girl. Go girl.
Okay, so when I had to write because I knew I would have forgot what I wanted to say. So when Takeshi said like about being proud where you come from, like why aren't like Americans proud to say they're American? And that's a question I had to ask myself too, like growing up, because I felt like I was like, ew, America, what is that? And I feel like it's just a very complicated thing because part of it, I'm gonna be honest, was like being shunned. Like it came from like, and I see Takeshi at like put that in the chat too. Like I feel like it was like comments from other people, like fellow like other Jamaicans, like they're like, oh, you're a Yankee. That word, oh my God, the amount of times I've heard that in my life, Jesus, I should just get a tattooed on my forehead. Like, might as well. Like, and there was also like things like being put into my ear, like, oh, like, the way y'all food looks and stuff like just American culture in itself. Like, the food, like y'all don't discipline your kids, like, like why y'all dance like that, things like that. So for me, I began to see it from like what they were saying, and then also I feel like it's just a weird position for us too as Black people, because like with the things being done against us in this country, so it also becomes hard to relate. So I feel like it's a mixture because no country is perfect as well, like Takeshi said, no, none. But like I feel like it was a mixture of those two things for me, why I never really like I didn't want to say I'm from America. Obviously, like as I feel like when I really became a little more comfortable saying it is in college, when I, like Tahiti said, I began to learn more about what what Black American culture is. Like, what Blacks went through in this culture and stuff like that. Like just even if it wasn't like good stuff, like like Black Wall Street and things like that. Even if it was like you know like even the struggles, I began to like learn more than like slavery, and they only tell you like 2 weeks of slavery and that's it, and that's not even the full story. So what else did okay, I have more notes. Okay, and then also I wanted to say, like, for me, I feel like growing up, like I I came to know the term Black Americans very late, because they used to call everyone African Americans until they made that distinction. And I feel like it's the line is blurred between the two cultures, because I feel like with that, like I feel like it's like with African American culture, like just Black culture is a mixture of many cultures. Like it's not one, like it's different cultures mixed in too. So I feel like for African American culture, it's because the slaves came here and that's how we got African Americans. So they brought their culture here. So I feel like that culture is a mixture of many other cultures. So I feel like in order to like that distinction is hard for me, because it's just like the lines are blurred between everything. It's just like African American music. Like where does that really come from? It comes from many different places. So it's just like we can find our the origin in many places. Like I said, I keep saying that. And then one more thing, like just Shaya said, like, I really related to that too, because like my parents are from here, from Jamaica. So it's just like I don't know much about my ancestors too. So it's just like I should take the initiative to learn about that, number one. And number two, I do feel like there is that part about not knowing, about like not seeing yourself in the history that's being taught. But at the same time, I feel like the distinction between my experience and hers is that, like, growing up in school, I was among peers who had was into that culture. Like I know how to do a chicken noodle soup. Hey, clear it out. Like I know how to do a stanky leg. Like, oh wow, baby. Like like I was among those people. So for me, I feel like that's why, in a way, I'm able to relate more to that culture, relate to Black culture, African American culture. So yeah, my long speech. Done.
I loved it. I love the fact that you actually wrote notes down. Like it felt like a little
Yeah, because I would forget.
girl. I felt that. I felt that.
You guys are so funny. But what I was gonna say, I think like because I consider myself African American, like I use the term African American because I know that I have descent from like I know somebody in my family was a slave. Like I know that like that was a thing because like my last name is Simpson. Like that is not like a Black last name. Like that is a European last name. So like I know like because I'm aware of things like that, but I also think like in terms of people not calling themselves like African American or like not African American, but American, I think it's also like it's empowering to have somewhere to come from, because you see African American people or like people who like they don't really know where they're from, like to an extent, like people who like people who are Caribbean American and they say where they're from, like, oh, my family is Jamaican, or my family is Antiguan, or my family is this. But people who are like from here, like from America, it's like they don't really have like a sense of like a root to like a culture. So like I think that's why people who are like might be like first generation or second generation, they always refer back to like their descent. Obviously your descent is like super important, especially like if it goes into how you're raised. But I think like it's just empowering to know where you're coming from. Like I also think that like nobody wants to like say like you live in a country that's not even for you. So like to say like I'm American and to like be proud of it, I feel like it's one thing to say you're American and it's another thing to be like proud of saying you're American. Like you can say you're American just because of technicalities, because that is your nationality, this is where you were born. But to be like, oh, like I'm American, like it's hype, like I'm hype about being American, like this is it. Nobody, I don't really think any person of color, unless like that person of color feels like America has like really changed their life dramatically and they feel like so patriotic because like their life is drastically better or their family's life is drastically better, will necessarily be like, I'm so happy to be American. Because historically in like in the historical context, and even now, it's like you live in a country that's not even for you. Like you live in a country that like they put you down. Given that happens in other countries, but it's just like, and of course, like America's always at the center of it. Not that it should be, but it is. So it's like something that's broadcasted. So it's like for you to be like, yeah, I'm American, and you're Black, you're African American. It's just like, I don't know. Like I just think that's why like right, like in terms of like some like for example, like I took a class like in college, it's African American history, and she put a hyphen in the middle, and I like the hyphen there. And my professor, she didn't like the hyphen, and she was like, why? She was like, I was fighting so hard to get that hyphen taken away, and like she was like, because I think like but you know, I love her, that's my sis, but she was like, I really don't want the hyphen to be there. I was like, I think the hyphen fits though. I was like, because these people are essentially descent from Africa, but like they live in America, but America is not a country that's for them. I feel like the separation is rightfully so because societally there is a separation. So
that I do think is a big part. That's why I asked if American culture is Black culture. I feel like there's a divide because when people say like that, I hear I'm proud to be Black. I never hear I'm proud to be American. Like no, you actually do hear that. You hear people say I'm proud to be American, but like there's a strong influence on the Black part. Like I'm proud to be Black. Like I'm proud of like what I've like my ancestors have been through, like the things I've had to fight through. Regardless if I've been here, my color alone, like that's going to influence that. So like I hear a lot of that. So I feel like that's another tie into why people aren't saying like I'm proud to be American, is because it's so hard. It's so hard to be proud of something that's not for you, that doesn't advocate for you, I have to beg the country I'm supposed to be proud of, the one I pray for, all of that. I have to say that I matter. So if I have to do all of that, why would I be proud to even claim them? Like that's really where a lot of that comes from. Something else Ray did put in the chat, saying that, you know, he's not really concerned of what others think of him, like his family matters. Well, I can go from that because of my trifecta. That family is part of the reasons why I was worried about my culture. Oh, you're not even Guyanese, you were born in Antigua, you should talk like that. Bro, if you speak this way to me, like I was never Antiguan enough, I was never Guyanese enough, so what the hell am I? What am I? Like after a while, you really do have to find it within yourself what you're comfortable with what you're comfortable with. And then feeding back to what Takesha said, like with us moving, and like every country does have their own defeats, but at the end of the day, like I feel like I could always go, like if I go home, I feel it in my bones. Like I feel my culture, like I feel it there. Like I feel this pride when I step off the plane and I touch them, like ooh, I'm like ooh, home is running in my blood. And it's like, if I'm not going to be accepted here, at least like I'll feel it a little when I go down there. So don't get me wrong. Colorism is Guyana and colorism, whew, speeches could be held there. It's like definitely that. But then you feel this is like, I'd rather be in my own country and go through it than in somewhere else's. I feel like that's where that stems from. Because I definitely.
So what I'm saying is, okay, this is the issue. Like, I know we're saying it like, yes, we go back home, there are issues there, I feel more at home there or whatever. But I know that when a lot of us who are mixed with American go back home as well, people will say that you're not a part of the culture. And I'm not saying that to disrespect in any way, but I'm saying no matter where you go, or no matter what it is, even if I'm from uptown Jamaica, like I go to country in Jamaica, they know I'm not from there. They will tell you you're basically a foreigner in their area because there it's like a different type of culture than what you'll see back home. What I'm saying is whenever there's like this stigma where it's like, yes, this happened in America, like white people caused this to happen. We don't know about our history. They don't teach it in school. So that's the reason why we don't identify as American. You give them that power to say, okay, you are not a part of us. You don't belong here because you don't accept that. You don't allow yourself to say, I don't care what you say. my ancestors worked hard for me to be a part of this culture. So I am a part of this culture. And you're still, that's the thing. In Jamaica, like, yes, we gained independence and we developed our own culture. There was a culture, an African American culture that was developed in America, but because of the fact that they don't teach about it, because you're still fighting for it to be a culture, that's the reason why we're still having an issue. But when you discredit it and say that, okay, I'm not a part of this culture, it kind of takes things back. Like, it doesn't help trying to push to get where you are, because now we're all dividing ourselves. We're like, I'm not African American enough. Okay, well, I'm African American, but I'm not, my ancestors weren't born here. Then it's like all these other divides, all these reasons why I should not, or maybe I should or should not help in the fight to like establish where I am going with like Black, what do you call it, with the Black Lives Matter movement in America. Let me say we, because I'm really a part of this culture as well. I don't want to sit here and pretend like I'm not. We really do need to push forward. You shouldn't give anyone that power over you to tell you what you are and what you are not. Because even if I go back home, someone is gonna say to me, you're so Americanized, blah, 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 you're not Jamaican anymore. I could care less the price of rice, whatever you think. It does not change it for me. And I'm saying we allow like the whole impact of slavery and imperialism to tell us like, yes, don't identify as that, because we're still fighting for it. But whenever you choose not to identify, you're still giving white people that power. And that's the issue. That's what I don't like. That's the problem I'm trying to get a lot of people to see. Like, be proud to say, yes, I am an American, because you're fighting to assimilate like ourselves. We're fighting to assimilate ourselves as the African American culture that is here, because there is an African American culture here. And I understand the reparations part of it as well. And I get it. If they were supposed to get reparations, we wouldn't get it. But the way I look at it is, even if we don't, there are still laws and other policies that would benefit us from being here, even if we don't get the land space from our ancestors. And for me, that's good enough. Like, it shouldn't be like, okay, you can get it, we can't get it, that's a problem. Like, it shouldn't be like that for Black people. Just because some of us win, that should be good enough for all of us. Because you never know, maybe next time we could say, okay, this battle was fought, they got reparations, now we know what to do to push reparations in our homelands, in our home countries. Like,
all right, so I'm picking up from that. But the thing is though, you could big example, there are white people who are a part of the Black Lives Matter. So you don't necessarily have to be in the culture. No, I'm not discrediting what you're saying. I'm giving like a valid argument against it. You don't necessarily have to be in the culture or like claim the culture to want to fight for their betterment, their rights or whatever. But I do pick up what you're saying. The more we do allow ourselves to divide, I feel like, but it doesn't need to be a divide. So what? I don't associate myself with like, I don't associate myself with your culture per se. Why is there what's the problem? Like, why can I not still be, why is the, cause like I said, I like, to me, I'm a guy Tegan. Like, that's really how I, like a Black guy Tegan. That's how I associate myself. But I'm definitely Americanized. Like, I just said like 5 different times. In the Caribbean, I would have got clocked for that. Because
I'm saying,
I'm using that.
You, Amy, versus someone like Jashir or Tashana. You get what I mean? It's easy for you to say, yes, I'm like, you have friends back, you have people you know back home, people that you grew up with. You get what I mean? Like, you have references back home where you're like, outside of your family group, where you're like, okay, this is my group, these are my people. And yes, that's like comforting for you. Like, but you don't for people like Jashia or Tashana or Ray, it's like, yes, for us, like, yes, I have these connections with people back home that I went to school with. I have them on social media. If I did want to rekindle anything, that opportunity would be there, right? But it wouldn't be like that for others, like for others who were born here, who were also raised here, or just travel back home from time to time. But it's like, yes, they could make those connections, but we already have that. So it helps living in Jamaica to feel even more like a home, right? But coming here, we created a home. Like, we're on this conversation with people that have become a part of our home. You get what I mean? So it's like, I see Jashia put something and I'm trying to see.
She asked, do you just want us to claim both proudly? That was Jashia's question for today.
it's not that I want you to claim both proudly. Like, it's more like if you feel like you are a part of the culture, or let's just say, not even feel, let's say you are a part of the culture. I'm just saying, whatever you identify as, whenever you're a part of any culture, even if you choose to move to China tomorrow and you've lived there for 2 years, that's a part of your culture because that's your new way of life. Don't allow anybody to tell you that you're not good enough to be a part of this culture, because we have this thing like, you're not Black enough, you're not Jamaican, you're not this enough. Don't allow anybody to tell you like you can't be a part of this culture because you're not enough of it. Like, that's the issue. That's where, like, now it comes back to what you were saying, where like you feel a little bit more like self-conscious. Like, so if you say like, oh, I'm Jamaican around a Jamaican person back home, you'll feel a little bit more self-conscious to say it, because you're like, they hear me speaking a little bit like mea twang, so like maybe like, no, you're American. Or even here, like, speak a little patois or whatever, they're like, okay, like, you're not like, don't allow anybody to say you're not enough of something, especially when you know that you're a part of it. I'm saying, because then the issue, we're allowing people to take away a part of our identity. Like, and that's what's been happening. That's what's been happening like for centuries, for generations. Like, we allow white Americans to mask these parts of our identity, and then we tell each other that we are not enough to be a part of it. Like, these are issues. Like, that's not okay. Before, when I just came, because you hear like our parents would tell us that same thing: don't be a part of African American culture, don't do this, don't date any African American boy. But why not? Like, we make them out to be so like such bad people, as if their culture was like so bad. There's disgusting people in every single culture, no matter where you go. There's sucky ass men and women in every single culture. The people who treat you like trash in every single culture. So why do we make African American culture sound so bad? Is it because we're ignorant? Is it because we don't know it? Is it because we're not proud to be American? It's just like, I'm like, these are the issues. You get what I mean? I'm dead.
All right, Tecumseh. Tecumseh just, she preached us. We like that.
Come on, Professor. Come
All
on.
right, Professor.
I'm taking that. I'm taking the Cliff Notes version of that, and I'm putting it in an argument for Twitter. Thank you, boo. She got me a new argument point for Twitter. Thank you, boo. You know I love arguing with these people. Thank you.
Nah, you made me feel confident enough, because I'm going to Japan in May, and I actually was considering being there. I'm gonna be jacking Japanese soon.
I love it. Get me some, some anime. Anyway, but everything Takeshi was saying, big facts. I feel like, like the basis of what I was trying to get there is basically stuff she was saying. You should be confident to be whatever culture you feel you effing are. Period. The problem comes when you're not being a culture because other people are telling you shouldn't be it. Nothing wrong with it. But I did want to touch on something Takeshi said, basically, and like how it influenced our way of life. I will stand back from like the parents thing. I can use my own parents as an example. Is the not letting, don't become one of these American kids. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first came here, I had massive culture shock. I was in class. I remember it was English class, my first class of the day, when the kids stood up and told the teacher, fuck you. And I was there like, and he was allowed to just walk out the class. Me, I was waiting for the licks because I said, no, this child. So no, not sending him to the headmaster. That's okay. And then everybody was being loud and shouting. So when I first came, I was like, oh no, I never want to be like these kids. Like, this is not the crack I want to get. The culture you identify in, how has that changed your perception in the decisions you make? For instance, relationship, career-wise, what else, and academics. Part B to that question is, how has that been influenced by, for instance, your parents if they're of a different culture, or your friends if they are of a different culture?
Okay, so for relationship wise, right? So, in Caribbean culture, there are these expectations that women are supposed to do for men, right? Because I basically grew up with my grandmother saying things like, you have to know for wash, cook, and clean, because if you don't know for do them something here, like, no man not go want you, blah, blah, blah. all these other things, right? But coming to America and experiencing more of like the Me Too movement, all this, Me Too movement, all these other things, like women saying, like, no, I'm not going to do these things. Like, I'm not going to do these things and it should be okay. Like, you also, like, I would grow up with my grandmother also teaching the men how to wash, cook, and clean. But at the same time, anytime my grandfather went out for work and he came back in, my grandmother also went for work and she came back in, and my grandmother would still have to prepare the meal, take care of the kids, and doing all that while my grandfather would literally just come home, eat, shower, go to bed. You know what I mean? So even though I was raised where the men would also learn to do those things as well, it still seemed like in the household, it was more of the woman's job than the man's. Now, as I moved here, I started to see like a different perception of that. Like, even with, I guess, even the girls like washing their underwear while they shower and the men like not doing it. And it's also like how men will like, they'll be scared to like touch a woman's underwear or like make fun of it or whatever, but you'll touch it when you want to take it off. I'm just saying, that's another problem. Like, men won't wash a woman's underwear, but they'll touch it when they want to take it off. It's like all these small issues that I would think were okay. Now, when I moved here, I would say, like I was saying, like with the Me Too movement and all the other stuff where women are like, okay, we are more independent. Even in Jamaica, there's a lot of independent women. I don't want to discredit that as well, but I'm just saying they're not putting up with those stigmas. It's like those stigmas were not acceptable. And I guess it's also because like here it's like everyone's thinking like very individualistic. It's less of like a societal group thing kind of thing. So even in my relationship, I was like, yes, I would like to cook and clean and stuff, but I'm not going to do that every day. I'm not about to be the one. Like, it's not about to be me all the time. You're going to have to step up as well. Like, even finances. In Jamaica, there's a lot of women who believe that men should control, they should be the one that pays for everything. But then learning independence as well from my mom and growing up here as well has let me know that, yes, it can be different because we have these conversations. Like, we can split the bill. Like, we can figure out our own way of doing things that's not our parents' way. Like, there's other ways. It's okay for me to not be Christian or to question Christianity, which is something I probably would never do back home. Like, it's okay for me to have these questions and discuss it, and it's okay, because back home I felt more pressure to not say anything, to just keep my mouth shut and just get on with life as if like this is the way things should be.
Okay, yeah, definitely with the group think, I feel like like I wouldn't even just do the relationship. I could do like academics because that's big. In the Caribbean, most of the time you five things. Five, like actually, like not even just in the Caribbean, but like there's like five careers. With a teacher, a doctor, engineer. I can't even remember the other two. Cause these three,
Pasta.
Pasta. I'm telling you, like those like
a lawyer.
Lawyer. I forgot lawyer. It's like you had to be those things. Like, you were not successful if you were not that thing. Those things. I want to be I'm weak. I want to be a child psychologist. Like, that's my passion right there. When I try to speak about that with these people, like, what is that? Because mental health is a whole different topic to them. They don't understand those way of things. But the openness to have questions, I feel like I didn't have that in the. I feel like you had to stick. Like, when you talk about Christianity, God forbid you question who God is. I have to twice. Like, forbid you question religion. Oh, I realized I had options. I feel like that's what it is. In the Caribbean, I didn't think I had a lot. Don't get me wrong, I love where I'm from. I love my home, blah, blah, blah. I tell people I'll retire, but the way I am now, I cannot go back there and live. It'll be like so hard for me to I feel like my way of thinking, like that's really what it is. Like, my way of thinking and seeing the world expanded. Like, everything isn't black and white. Everything isn't black and white. I got you, Tikishi.
I have a question. Okay.
What's the
But I
question?
always
Yeah.
wanted to know this. All right.
Uh-huh.
What's the difference between African American and Black American? And from what I know of it, I would say Black American is like, but I, yeah, but there's two, they say they're different. That's why I'm always confused because I'm like, all right, I would consider myself Black American, I guess because I'm like, okay, I'm a Black person in America. Even though technically I'm of African descent, I've always wondered if it's more for like people who are like, what do you call it? Like they're African and born and raised in America, and
I get what you're saying.
everyone else is just like Black American. You
I
get
get
what I
what you're
mean?
saying.
Like I've always been confused about that, but I've always been scared to ask.
Okay. In terms of like African American and Black American, I feel me personally have like I've never called myself a Black American. I just don't like I don't like using like the color, you know, I think. I don't like using like the like but like that's just me personally, like me personally. But like I've always seen as like they're used interchangeably, you know, like Black American and African American. And I think historically they're used like interchangeably too. But I think now in terms of like African American and like Black American, I think Black American is a bit more general. So like you could like you would say you're a Black American even though like you would say like, oh, I was born in Jamaica, and like but I am a person who is, because you know in reality there's only like two races, so you would say I'm Black, so you would say I'm a Black American because Black is like the general umbrella, and I think African American falls under that, whereas like your family, like you have like Southern roots, like you have like, you know, your family are like descendants of like people who were enslaved kind of thing, versus like, and I think it's also different from like people who are like from Africa too, because people who like who are from Africa, they don't come here and say I'm African American, they say I'm Nigerian American, or they place like where they're from Africa in front of it. So that's why I think like Black is more like a big umbrella, and then it's African American when it's like your descent like enslaved individuals. And then yeah, I hope that answered your question.
And then also, what is Black culture? And I feel like we haven't answered that question today, but I definitely think it's something that everyone really needs to talk about.
I feel like it's like a mixture. It's like I don't want to butcher her name, Zai. I think that's her name. Sorry, I'm butchering it. Zaire. Yeah. Like she was saying, like I feel like the term Black is like an umbrella term, because if we really get into it, it's a social construct like race. But like I feel like it's an umbrella term. I feel like different cultures fall under Black culture. Like it's just a term they slapped onto onto many things. Like so I feel like when you hear different aspects of Black culture, like people say Black culture is like soul food, you know, and it's just like, oh, chitlins, and it's like collard greens. You will never catch me eating chitlins. You will never catch me. But I'm just like, okay, I don't identify with that aspect of that culture, but I still identify with certain aspects of Black culture, like the dancing, the music, certain foods I still eat, you know. So I feel like because it's such a large umbrella term, it's hard to say what exactly is, because I feel like different cultures fall onto what Black culture is. Like part of that is some African American, there's different like Jamaican, some of Jamaican culture falls into Black culture, because America's a melting pot. Like there's America, what is Americans culture? It's a mixture of so many other cultures. So I feel like we get influences from, because Black music is directly influenced from African music, is directly influenced from some Jamaican, like, you know, like it's, so that's what I'm trying to get at. Like it's a mixture of what Black
Right. Now I'm saying sometimes I get frustrated with that because I'm like, there's a lot of ignorance with the concept of Black culture. And that's what I think the issue is for me as well, because I definitely think I've seen like, you know, like with like some white celebrities will try to like mimic Jamaican culture, which to be honest, everybody does, because Jamaicans, we mimic other songs from America, redo it, change it, switch it up, sing it however we might, put it on a reggae beat, and it becomes a whole vibe. But then I never saw an issue with it because we do it all the time. Like you'll see 10 different songs on one beat in Jamaica and people will remake American songs. But when I came here and like you would see artists from America remake Jamaican songs and stuff, people would be so upset about it. They're like, "Oh, they're imitating Black culture, or they're doing this or they're doing that." And I'm like, okay, but it's okay for us. Like we do it all the time in Jamaica. Like we imitate these songs, we change it, we make it our own, and it's okay. Same thing with wearing the dashiki. Like I wear it because like I would want to have like pride in being a part of the African culture. But then if like a white person wears it, like even if they're white African, they're like, and they may not know, they see it and they're like, no, this is wrong. Like you're imitating it. And I'm just like, it's those little things that kind of like blur it a little bit, because that's why I'm saying like you can see a white person who's Jamaican and not know and like think they're trying to imitate the like they're trying to wrongfully imitate the culture when they actually just have pride in it and they want to, I don't know. I'm just like, it's the confusion.
I'm a relate on that. Everything you just say there. Black culture, like Tashana said, like it's a varied amount of things. What it is, like culture is like a lot of it is stereotypical stuff, like things you would associate because a group of people do like a certain amount of, for instance, most like a lot of Black people listen to hip hop, so that becomes a part of Black culture. Not saying that other races and other people do not do it, but it becomes so much a part of their culture. I could speak heavy on why it's a problem when people mimic our culture. It's not the mimicking of the culture. It's not because you could appreciate other cultures. I had this rant on Instagram the other day with these two Russian models who wore Ivy Park. And the problem for me was they could have used Black girls for what they wanted. This is why. Not because there were anything wrong with these girls. These two girls, when I tell you they're pretty, they're mad pretty. Like, I was just like, what? There were so many ways, because then the girl she wrote, she's like, oh, like I have an appreciation for the culture. I don't say nothing when you guys wear like straight wigs and stuff like that. So why is it a problem when if I decide to do my hair in braids and whatever? The makeup and lighting were done to make you look darker. Why didn't you just use dark girls? Everything was edited for you to look darker. I cannot remove my darkness. Ever. I could never remove my darkness. I wear these braids. Thank God I have a job where it's fine. There are other job places who would find this unprofessional. I look ratchet. I'm this, I'm that. A person of a lighter complexion, a white person, somebody from another culture does it, it's seen as ethnic or, trendy. They get praised for doing the thing that I would get humiliated for. That's the culture appropriation, correct? That is, I see you, Tashona, you over here slamming the screen. No, but I feel like that's what the issue is. It's not you just doing it. You take a Caribbean song, for instance, just use an example because you use that. You take a Caribbean song and then you remix it, you do your own touch in it. But then all of a sudden, it's like you came up with this on your own. It's your you were not influenced by anything, and then you're amazing because this is a brand new idea. You're so amazing for these beats. This whole other country was doing it, and then the lack of credit and the downplay of me doing this thing, like, I was like, oh, y'all were doing it. Oh, that's kind of cool. This other person does it. Oh my goodness, you are amazing. I've never seen this before. It's the lack of credit and the disrespect. That's the reason why it's a problem. Because it's not even like, because like you're saying, you can't look at somebody and not know they're in the culture. I feel like it's not just them. It's also the society backing of them doing it and me not doing it. And changing the name. The woman with the bonnet. The woman with the bonnet. When she was trying to change the name with the bonnet. Ma'am, we've been sleeping with a little girl. I will never forget. I'm gonna go to Tash after I say this. There was this little girl. She slept in I don't know what kind of, I think it was a scarf. I think she slept in a scarf because she wanted to go to sleep. So when she woke up in the morning, her hair wasn't messy. And then they had it on the news. Oh my God, this new invention, this new way of blah, blah, blah. Never mind. Black women, like not even just people with hair that, you know, they need to have it wrapped up, have been doing it for years. And there was a time where it was frowned upon. But then this little white girl, now I'm not even coming from white people here. I'm just saying, this little white girl did it. And then it was like, oh, wow. Oh my goodness. That's the problem with cultural appropriation and picking up things like just taking it and making your own. I get ridiculed for it and you're praised for it. That's my, like, that was the big issue for me. But
I
Tasha,
feel like another thing is like, you can see like, like you could, sometimes you can't feel like some people have good intentions and it just come off wrong. But like, I feel like also sometimes like you can tell when people just have negative intentions with it and stuff like that. Cause like I remember Adele was just in the news on Shade Room the other day because she had a little bantu knots and she had her little Jamaican flag waving around. And like a lot of people, they was like, they didn't have that much of a problem. Like some people clearly was like, oh, what is she doing? But other people were here remixing Hello from the Others. Like some people, because we could tell like her intention, like she was there. And like, you know, her intention wasn't to be disrespectful. Like she was really like, oh my gosh, like look at me when I'm a little bit. Like she was so excited. So it was just like we saw her intention wasn't to be disrespectful. She wasn't saying, oh my God, look at this cool new hairstyle. Like I just invented it. You know, you could just twist your hair, like, you know, but like for other people, they use it as a prop. Like, you know, like if you're dressing up as if you're dressing up as Bob Marley, why do you need to paint yourself black to do it? We can tell you're Bob Marley. We can tell you're Bob Marley. Like it starts to irk us because it's just like you really didn't need to, like, you know, now you're not showing any appreciation for our culture. Like you just drop it in there like it's like a aesthetic. And then when you're done with those dreads, you just get rid of it. You don't.
What do you think that we can do to change, like, you know, why people feel the way they feel, or like not feeling confident enough to say like, this is who I am, this is where I'm from?
I'm on a roll tonight. Jesus, I'm not talking for the rest of the day tomorrow. But I feel like even although we hear this part a lot, like, but I think like having more conversations like that, because even with the part where Takeshi was saying like, you know, by not saying that we're American, like you're giving, you know, white people, like, you know, the power, like the white man who says, yeah, you're not American. They say, yeah, you see, they agree, like, you know, so you're really not American. But I feel like that really opened my eye too, because for me, I also have like my own personal journey with being more comfortable saying it. And now I can say I'm way more comfortable saying it than when I was like back then when I was younger, but it's still like a process. But like, you know, I feel like hearing that, it made me really think like, okay, we need to be, you know, more open about saying that we're American and stuff like that, you know, like having conversations about like our culture and educating people more. Because I find like it's really ridiculous that when we get to college, that's when we know more about the history that Black people went through in this country. Like that's madness to me, because why do I have to wait till I'm like 18, 19 to really know certain things? Like what to know? Oh my gosh, when I found out New York had slaves, I almost lost my mind. I almost lost it because the way it was.
Shut up.
Oh, does she know? Wait, Takeshi, does she know which elementary school I went to? We only know about I am proud to be an American, and that's the Star Spangled Banner. That's it, bro. They teach you for that social studies test, and that's it. So, and that social studies test, it doesn't have more than one day of slavery on it. That's it. I'm telling you. So when I got to college in my Africana studies class, and they was like, New York had slaves, I said, oh my Jesus. And then I was working at that very location that summer, and I went back there to find out slaves were buried under where I was walking. Hey, I almost fell out. I said, the North that was acting like the South was bad. Yeah, the South was bad, but the North, Jesus, I almost lost it. And I remember a guy was saying, I remember in the Instagram comments, which I like to argue, he was like, Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorite presidents. He wasn't I said, Abraham Lincoln, the guy
guy.
He's like, yeah, because he abolished slavery. I
No,
said,
he did not.
he only did it to keep the South. He did not, he had slaves. And that's when I realized the education is just preposterous. I said the fact that we have to wait until we're in college to learn about these things is really crazy. So I feel like education plays a big part in having these spaces that have the conversation also. So like we could have more discussion. Because just hearing what Takeshi said already had me thinking like, okay, you know, I really should, you know, be more open about being an American, you know, and embrace this culture. Like, you know, continue my journey through trying to accept it more. So yeah.
Yes, wanted to chime in. Go Z.
I think that in terms of like fixing like the issue, that's what the question was, I believe, right? Fixing the issue is like, I think creating spaces to have conversations like this, like in terms of like, you know, because like the Black culture, like you asked a question like, is there a difference between like Black American, African American? Like some people will think that's a dumb question and never ask it and will be confused all their lives because they think it's a dumb question. Like, but you're in a space where you like, well, you know, this is what we're talking about. I feel like I can ask this. And I think also just relating with like people who are like, you guys are the same in terms of like racially, we're all like Black people, majority of us Black women, but then also like it's different because like how I identify as like what I identify as in terms of African American, what you identify as in terms of Jamaican American, and like understanding why people feel the way that they do. I also think it's in terms of like understanding what you're willing to like learn and find out and understand. Like it's okay to not agree with people, but to understand where they're coming from. You know? Conversations like this and like doing things about it and making people feel comfortable enough to want to talk about it and like really like get people thinking, because it's like now I'm thinking it's like, am I really proud to be American? It's like, I mean, it's whatever, I'm content, but it's like I get it. Like I genuinely enjoy the conversation. I think like getting more people to like have a conversation like this, and also like being like not as offended like by, because some people just really don't understand, like they really like don't know, so it's like not being offended and being willing to like be patient and take your time like explaining, not because you feel like you need to explain yourself, but just because like you want them to like get where you're coming from, like what's important to you, and things like that.
I just want to say, like, you know, I'm happy because, like, whenever I try, like, sometimes I have tried, like, to say, like, yes, I'm also American. And people are, like, shocked. Like, why would you say that? You came from Jamaica. Like, you grew up in Jamaica. Like, why would you say that? But I keep having to reiterate, like, I'm not going to discredit that I'm a part of a whole new culture that is 100% different from what it's like living back home. And even if I'd want to pretend as if this culture was not existent in my household, when I walk outside, I am definitely an American. Whether it's the way I speak, the dollar pizzas that I eat all over New York, the parks that I go to with my friends, the movie theaters that we hang out at, like all those things play a part of me being more of an American than me being more of a Jamaican because I'm living here. Because outside of my household, that's the lifestyle that I am. That's the culture that I'm immersed in, not back home. And yes, even having all these different cultures, that's like all these different cultures, all these immersions of food, that's a part of the American culture that I probably would not experience being back home as well. So it's like, you know, I guess it definitely makes me open my eye to like claim like, okay, yes, I too am also American, because everything that I'm saying now were things that I was thinking about in my head too. I would be like, why? And then you're scared to ask because you don't want people to say like, no, this is not right. You should not think that way. However, you're thinking is wrong. Like, you don't want to be wrong. And I think that's what I'm learning in this conversation. Like having this conversation let me know like it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have a conversation and not be right, or to know that you're right and have someone else feel like you are not because of like this is how they choose to identify themselves. Like that is okay too, because everyone has their reasoning. But as long as that reasoning is not the doing of other people, then it's fine. It should be because like you want to. And it also allowed me to say like in my head and forever, like I am more than enough. Like
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Definitely. I don't even have much to add because you all touched on every point I wanted to make. It's your comfortability. Like we have to be open to the discussion. That's how we fix it. Everything we need to have open to discussion. We're not only open to discussion, open to the responses people are giving. Because if you notice, we didn't all always agree on the same thing. Still up to now, I'm pretty sure we had like different choices, different variances of how much we believed in another statement. But we came to a part where we accepted what we said. Something else, history. It's just we're not being taught enough. We're not being taught enough because what? Not only why do I have to wait till college, but then it's not really a class. It's like an elective, like a selection. It's not something I need to know. So it's like that's also an issue. Why is it not better in the curriculum? What is going on? But bro, education is a whole different conversation we need to have. Not even a front. And then I feel like I touched on two parts. I think I touched on, and definitely the I am enough. Period. You are what you are. I like something Ray said earlier when he was like, what he said? He said he doesn't feel the need to justify because this is just all he's known. This is what I am. I am what I am. I'm telling you, I'm about to have that printed. Next week you're gonna see it like I am what I am. Period. But yeah, I love the discussion. Thank y'all for being here again. You know, another week in a row. This was the Inner Perspectives. Thank you so much. Our next talk is going to be on toxic masculinity. So feelings, yes, get excited because
I cannot. Girl, I'm writing the notes right now.
definitely write the notes now. Definitely write the notes.
Ready.
Yes. But yeah, any suggestions you ever have, like that's something I want other people to save. Probably gonna put it on the blog so people know. Definitely shoot it my way. You know, I like knowing things. Like I want to speak about stuff people want to hear about. So you know, just let me know. Once again, thank you for your support. Love y'all. I really do. So you know, so I tell y'all good night. Stay safe.
Good night.
Safe.
Good night.